Over the past 24 hours, there have been a lot of new developments when it comes to James Gunn, DC, and a potential Warner Brothers company sale amidst a very competitive bidding war between Paramount and Netflix, and with some odd statements from James Gunn himself and a description leak of the Supergirl trailer that was just shown at the CCXP in Brazil, Gunn's DCU is under scrutiny. Again. Now, if you're new to this channel and you're not yet familiar with my track record, earlier in July, I was the first to report that James Gunn Superman was a box office flop, contrary to popular belief at the time. I was then also the first to report that James Gunn had been quietly demoted at Warner Brothers, which is why he had pivoted away from his Phase 1 Gods and Monsters towards a Superman saga situation. Eventually, both the mainstream media, independent media, and other YouTubers all followed suit in their reporting, but it's fair to point out that when I had shared this information initially, it was not yet trendy to talk about it, which still didn't deter me from reporting the truth. And if that kind of journalistic integrity tickles your fancy, please make sure to like and subscribe so that you could really support an independent entertainment news reporter like myself.
Do it.
Now, when it comes to the mainstream media, their top focus right now is to cover the bidding war that's taking place over the potential purchase of Warner Brothers, with both Paramount and Netflix being seen as the top contenders at this point. At least on the surface, right now, Warner CEO David Zaslav seemingly prefers the Netflix offer rather than the Paramount one. Whether they're offering Zaslav a few extra dollars, a high-profile position for him to stick around after the sale, or perhaps other incentives that we simply don't know about, he seems to like what they're saying to him. But while Zaslav may prefer Netflix's offer for whatever reasons, Netflix could face a very big regulatory hurdle with the US government should their offer be accepted by Warner, which could be a major headache for Warner's shareholders, investors, and its board members. On the other hand, the Ellisons, who own Paramount, are the second richest family in the world, and they've also received additional financial support for this potential Warner Brothers deal from Saudi Arabia. Now, the Ellisons have a good relationship with US President Donald Trump, who would likely help them get the Paramount deal approved with regulators versus Netflix, which from what we know, Trump isn't a fan of. But regardless of what Zaslav prefers, I still think that this deal will ultimately boil down to the bottom line. Whether the deal ends up taking place amicably or even in a more hostile setting, we have yet to see. But I know most of you are thinking to yourself, well, where does that leave James Gunn and his DCU? And where does that leave Zack Snyder? And the answer to that is somewhat complicated, but I'll do my best to give you all the different angles here. If somehow the Netflix offer is accepted and Paramount backs down and disappears, this is probably the best case scenario for Gunn. While I think that regardless of any company sale, Gunn's position has significantly diminished at Warner Brothers after his recent DC failures like Superman, Peacemaker, and Creature Commandos, Netflix may not be so quick to fire Gunn. Their relationship with Zack Snyder seems to have ended recently, so not sure how quick they'd be to restore the Snyderverse, and they could certainly end up letting James Gunn stay out the remainder of his contract and only make a decision about him at a later point based on his results. Paramount, on the other hand, would likely want to actively push Gunn out sooner rather than later. Now, credit where credit is due, it was Comic Book News that first reported this early in October, and now that the mainstream media is essentially saying the same thing, I think it's fair to say that between Paramount not being in line with James Gunn's aggressive far-left politics and Zack Snyder's existing relationship with the Saudis, who have put a financial stake in Paramount's potential deal, a Paramount takeover of Warner Brothers would probably be the worst outcome for Gunn and the better outcome for Zack Snyder. But it's still important for me to say, we're not there yet. Snyder may have recently posted more cool photos from his DCEU days and even added a picture with DC Comics president Jim Lee, but there's still no certainty of how all of this would play out and where Snyder would fit in. With that being said, as I've mentioned before, after the release of the Snyder Cut, I would never underestimate Zack Snyder's ability to get his fan base hyped, nor would I underestimate his ability to politically navigate through companies in turmoil, but we can't jump the gun here quite yet. No pun intended. Speaking of Gunn, while most people haven't noticed, he's found his own quiet and cryptic way of dealing with the pressure that he must be feeling at the moment, by going to his favorite online hangout, Threads. You see, what I've noticed is that every time there's some bad press about him, he goes there to seemingly answer the questions of random fans in hopes of brightening his image. I mean, I'm not suggesting that nobody uses Threads, but let's just say that it's not the same as going on Twitter and saying all this stuff. And this time on Threads, James Gunn told a fan that he can't make a Spotify list with all of his favorite tracks because so many of them are going to appear in Man of Tomorrow, a movie that we all know may never even get made, depending on who ends up buying Warner Brothers and how quickly they're able to take the reins creatively. Now, to be clear, I still think that Supergirl, Clayface, and the Lantern series will all be released as planned. It's just a question of what, if anything, Gunn will be in charge of outside of that. Another topic Gunn likes to talk about on Threads is the future of his Batman movie. The funny thing is, we all know that his Batman has pretty much been sidelined after Superman flopping, but he consistently makes it seem like it's only a matter of time before that project starts filming. The funniest thing here is that while Gunn went to Threads to try to make himself look good, he actually inadvertently exposed himself as a hypocrite, and I'll show you what I mean. On the one hand, on Gunn's main feed he posted, "If you want to see something from a filmmaker, consider phrasing it as I as opposed to we, as in I want to see an on-screen Batman with white eyes versus we want to. Your personal desire is meaningful and has weight, but when you frame your personal desire as a universal one, it rings false and becomes forgettable. Own what you want now." But then Gunn responds to somebody else's post requesting that Gunn keep Batman serious looking and not goofy by saying, "We know where you stand." I mean, Gunn just said that it's best to take ownership and say I and not say we, but now he himself is using we. He doesn't even practice what he preached. And speaking of goofy, it turns out that Supergirl trailer that was shown in Brazil seems to be very much in line with the tone that we saw in Superman 2025, a movie that ultimately flopped. Apparently, the description of this trailer is fun, rebellious, and action-packed, featuring a track by Blondie. The teaser opens with a surprisingly grounded and comedic beat. We see Krypto, the superdog, casually lifting his leg to pee on a space rock, because that's what we all wanted, right? Krypto pissing on rocks. The camera then pans to Supergirl, who wakes up looking disheveled, groggy, and clearly nursing a massive hangover, so more of that crap that we saw in the Superman movie. And as she tries to gather herself, the iconic sound of Blondie kicks in, shifting the energy instantly. You know what? I think this all sounds wrong and stupid. The trailer explodes into a fast-paced montage of stylized action. We see Supergirl blasting through cosmic environments, delivering brutal punches to alien threats, and flying with aggressive speeds. The vibe is distinct from Superman. It's grittier, louder, and colorful, focusing on a Supergirl who's ready to fight. So if I had to sum up this Supergirl trailer, it sounds like this is just like the Superman movie, only kind of more quirky, and Supergirl is going to be more heroic and more of a girl boss in compared to Superman, who got his butt kicked every second. And in the past, James Gunn said it would be just like Guardians of the Galaxy, but you know what? It doesn't need to be like Guardians of the Galaxy. Not every movie needs to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Sometimes you just have to make somebody heroic and focus on that, and this whole dumb and goofy vibe that he brings to these DC movies, it's all wrong. Finally, I also want to mention something that Cosmic Book News was reporting on, that Zack Cregger, the person that directed the movie Weapons, has already pitched a DC movie to Paramount because they're already acting like they own Warner Brothers. And while I have no doubt that Cregger has met up with Paramount, we don't know 100% that his pitch was necessarily DC related. Yes, it's true that Cregger had an idea he developed for DC, but he could have also altered that project enough to work outside the DC universe without using the DC brand at all. Think of Zack Snyder in Rebel Moon, for example. He initially pitched it to Kathleen Kennedy as a Star Wars project, but when she passed on it, he reworked it as an original IP and then sold it to Netflix. Could it be that Cregger is already trying to pitch this DC idea to Gunn and it was already rejected in the past? It's certainly possible. I do find it interesting that after all these reports about this Paramount Cregger meeting, James Gunn went to Threads again to talk about movies that he enjoyed this year, out of the blue, with the first one on his list being Zack Cregger's Weapons. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this isn't a coincidence, but yet another James Gunn attempt for damage control, showing, yeah, I'm cool with Zack Cregger, there's no problem here. But when I zoom out and I sum up this entire situation here, Warner Brothers' sale is still up in the air, James Gunn's fate is still up in the air as well, and that could also be said about Zack Snyder's return. But there's one thing that's certain: James Gunn is no longer being protected by the press the way he was before, and the fact that even they acknowledge that he's in a tough spot means that it's 100% true, and I'm sure that he knows it. As for Snyder, whatever ends up happening, I think he could feel like he's the big winner here, because he's been receiving unprecedented support, not only from his core fan base, but even from people that were either ambivalent about his movies or not even fans of them, as most people seem to prefer his vision for the DC over Gunn's. And that's really saying something. And of course, I'll continue to keep you posted about all these latest developments, and if you enjoy getting updates from an independent news reporter like myself, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day!
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.